Hello, everyone. This is Devin Thorpe for CrowdFundBeat, and I'm excited to have with us today the CEO and founder of CrowdCheck, one of the most important players in the equity and investment crowdfunding universe, and talk about an exploding marketplace. Sara, thank you very much for being with us.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Sara, you play a really interesting role at CrowdCheck by providing a software as a service platform for the online portals and for investors to use to access diligence information. Is that essentially the right story for CrowdCheck in a nutshell?
I would actually put a slightly different spin on it. Because
please, you can explain it better than I.
It's more service as a service. Although we use technology and databases and mechanize the process as much as we can, the one thing that we are offering in this space, which is absolutely essential, is human judgment, because we are looking to answer the question, why would anybody in their right minds invest in a small unknown company over the internet? And the answer is, well, you wouldn't unless someone you trusted had checked it out for you. And the things that need to be checked out right now are not susceptible to purely software solutions. Things like reading the bylaws, making sure that you know what the number of the board of directors is supposed to be, and checking that the right number of board of directors approved the offering, for example. There's no algorithm yet written that can do that. When that is written, I think it will be us writing it. But right now, it's skilled human beings doing that, but just doing so in a highly mechanized and tech-enabled way.
Well, it is scary for consumer advocates, for regulators, and even for small investors. It's scary for large investors and experienced investors to look at a pitch online and make an investment decision. So it's helpful to know there's someone there doing it. Give us a sense of the scope of your offering so that investors understand what you're checking, what you're assuring them of, and what you're not checking and not guaranteeing.
Yeah, that's a really important thing. I mean, starting with the stuff that we don't do, we don't say if it's a good company or not. We don't say if it's a good idea. We think that's where the crowd can make its decisions. If you're selling a product that translates elephant to English, that would seem like a pretty weird thing to me, but there might be a market for it. So we're making no judgments as to the quality of the business decision or of the ability of the company to do the things that it's planning to do. What we're really looking at is this company is it legitimate? Has it been properly incorporated? Can it legally do the things that it says it's doing? Is it actually doing the things that it says it's doing? Are there any so-called bad actors involved in the offering? Because you may have seen the SEC's got these new bad actor rules. If you have someone who has something shady in their background, some securities fraud or something, that just pulls your whole deal apart. You cannot do the deal if you have someone like that who is a major shareholder or an officer or a director. So we check all of those things out, and then we pull the information together to present it to the investors so that they can make an informed investment decision. Like I say, we are not telling them whether this is a good thing or not, but we're giving them the tools to decide. So we present the certificate of good standing of the company, for example, and the investor, if it's a new investor, they're going to go, I have no idea what this thing is. You click on it, a little modal pops up, and it says, this is what this thing is, and this is why you should care about it, and if you don't see it, this is the decision that you should make about it. So we walk this new class of investor through all of the things that they need to look at to do their own due diligence, decide whether or not sufficient proof, evidence has been presented about the legitimacy of the company, and then they can think to themselves, well, is this a really good company or not? But at least they know whether or not it's a good idea. They know that it's legit. They know that it's not a fraud. They know that nobody's trying to get one over on them.
Well, Sara, there's a very interesting question I want to try and ask, and it's going to be difficult for me to frame this question, so follow along with me if you can. Let's see if I can actually ask the question in a way that will make sense. Under Title II of the Jobs Act, there are very limited definitions of what disclosures are required. And there is very little added, at least in terms of the Jobs Act, under Title II, where people are allowed to do a general solicitation. It doesn't require substantially more or new or specific disclosure. Under Title III, there is a very detailed disclosure proposed. Now, Title III isn't operational yet, so we don't know what the ultimate SEC rules will be. But they're very detailed rules, right, for the disclosure requirements. So the question I have for you is, as what you're seeing being done under Title II offerings, as you look at your platform in service and best practices in the industry, how does that vary from what is proposed under the SEC guidelines for Title III crowdfunding?
It's a really good question, actually, Devin. And here is where you see the markets actually performing as the markets should, because nobody should ever invest in a company unless they have certain basic information. And the way that this is presented to an investor, if you have a registered offering, is you have a Form S1 and you have a prospectus, and all of the information has to be presented in a prescribed manner, hitting all of the most important elements of disclosure. A miniature version of that is going to apply with respect to crowdfunding, Title III crowdfunding, where, as you say, there's a lot of mandated information. You must give information about the founders. You must give information about number of employees. And so all of that is spelled out for the issuer, and so the SEC has decided that's what the investor needs to know in order to make an informed investment decision. You look at in between those two offerings to accredited investors only and 506C offerings that we're seeing now, and what you see is that's the information people want anyway. So you might get it presented in a completely different way. You may have a video, you may have a graphic, you may have slideshows, you can have all sorts of innovative ways of disclosing information, but still the basics always there. And of course, if Crowdcheck's involved, we will make sure the basics are there. You're not going to be able to have a flashy slideshow without saying where you are incorporated, for example, or what you're selling. But what we see is the markets there, nobody's going to buy unless you give the basic information to the investors. So you're ending up in very much the same sort of place, whether it's Title II, 506C, or whether it's proposed Title III. It's the same information, and I'm hoping one of the things that will...
I hate to cut you off, but I want to really see if I'm understanding what you're saying, because this is such an important issue. What I think I hear you saying is that investors are essentially demanding the same thing the regulators are proposing to require under Title III.
It's very much the same thing. And that's where companies like Crowdcheck came in. As we put together our report that would cover all of the information we thought somebody needed to know, we made some guesses as to things that should be disclosed, and lo and behold, the SEC made pretty much the same guesses. Really, people know what they want. They want to know what is the company making, how is it going to make it, who's it going to make it with, when can it deliver, how many people is employed, does it have contracts in place, what are the major risks. The information that people need is usually a very standard set of information. And we are seeing the market demanding that information, even when, as you say, in 506C, there's no rules. You could produce that information any way you like. It just doesn't have to be old-style private placement memorandum with pages and pages of boilerplate disclosure that nobody ever reads. And this is one area where I diverge from my friends in the established securities industry. I have seen some of older partners in law firms refer to the way that information is disclosed on these online offerings as comic book disclosure. And no offense to comic books, but you can get good information in a graphic novel. There's nothing, just because you're presenting it in a more entertaining way doesn't mean it's not good information. So I really hope we're going to be able to see the innovative way of disclosing information that we're seeing in Title II, move over to Title III. And I'm hoping the SEC is not going to do anything that's going to prevent people from doing just that.
Well, one of the things that is one of the dynamics in crowdfunding that we're seeing evolve is that, of course, the people that are first at it are accredited investors and people who are seeking to get the attention of accredited investors. By definition, that cycle reinforces a certain professionalism, even on the part of the issuer. What will happen under Title III is there may be an absence of accredited investors in some deals. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just saying that it will certainly be allowed, and it will likely happen on some deals, especially smaller deals, especially yes, deals that don't scale well. Your mom and pop businesses that are raising money through debt or equity but are subject to these rules, my sense is that they will be very nervous about being able to complete this homework assignment, essentially, to make these disclosures correctly. Does the CrowdCheck system make this more daunting, more intimidating by adding a layer of technology on that, or does it help that entrepreneur in some way?
Makes it much easier, much easier. We are freeing up the mom and pop businesses especially, or any small company, from doing some of the drudgery and helping them put together an accurate and complete disclosure package. What we do, in fact, is say to the company, if you go with us, we will take you through the disclosure process. We will collect the documents to show that you're legitimate. We will help you comply with all of the disclosure requirements of the SEC, and at the far end, we will file it for you with the SEC. So by going through CrowdCheck, you can be absolutely assured that you have met the requirements of Title III crowdfunding. It's really making it so much easier for them. So we're hoping that we're not adding to the burden, we're in fact diminishing it.
Well, it is an interesting dynamic that we're seeing as people discuss the challenges for having non-accredited investors enter into this marketplace for the first time in 80 years. A few weeks ago I was talking to a regulator, and he just was really very afraid, genuinely afraid for the well-being of unaccredited investors, that they would be overwhelmed and would be taken advantage of. And I think there's some, I don't think that's a crazy risk, but I don't think he's giving people enough credit. Non-accredited investors can read too. They understand how the internet works. They can, if they can shop on Amazon, they can make an investment in a small business, it seems to me. What's your take?
I totally agree with you there. I think one of the things that the regulators are ignoring, in fact, is that this isn't actually a change from what's been happening for the last 80 years, because this has always happened. It's just that it's been happening in the shadows without a lot of regulation, because we all know that this is how small companies raise money, right? First thing you do, max out the credit card, then you go get the home equity loan, then you go to Grandma and Uncle Harry, and Grandma and Uncle Harry have been the first stop of entrepreneurs for the last 8 decades, for the last 800 decades. I mean, who do you go to? You go to the people you know. And this is actually a way of taking that disorganized marketplace and making it a lot more effective and a lot more transparent. So yes, regulators absolutely should be worried about the fact that a lot of people are going to get solicited to make investments over the internet. But that was always happening. That was always happening at Thanksgiving. It was always happening when you go to the synagogue or you go to church. People are always looking for money, and the people they look for money to is their social community. So it's not that different.
So what will be happening is the same people will be investing in the same kinds of deals they've been investing in the past, but now they'll be doing it in an organized way, in a disciplined way, in a way that employs a system like CrowdCheck or some similar system, because there's almost no way around it. You have to make these disclosures under the statute. So it's your take that people will be better off under the new way than they were under the old.
I think absolutely it will. I mean, in my old life, I used to do multi-billion-dollar IPOs, and getting a company ready for an IPO always involved a certain amount of housekeeping, and that housekeeping involved going back to Grandma and Uncle Harry and making sure that the offering to them had been done properly, and almost always there was some mistake done with it. So this way, you can do friends and family and extended social network in a much more transparent way, and much more effective way, and a much more compliant way.
Well, it is an exciting prospect to think about this new world that we're coming to. Sara, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us to discuss this. It's exciting to watch, and I really appreciate the role you're playing and the time you've taken to discuss it with us today.
Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. Now let's do some good.